The phrase orphaned immigrant saves abused dog, a hidden microchip reveals it's the lost pet of royalty, echoed in Elian's mind as he stared at the trembling creature huddled against the dumpster. The irony wasn't lost on him. Two abandoned souls finding each other in the forgotten corners of a city that had no place for either of them. Rain pattered against the cracked pavement, forming murky puddles that reflected the dim glow of distant streetlights. Elian pulled his thin jacket tighter, the fabric worn so thin it barely kept the November chill at bay. His fingers, calloused from 12-hour shifts at the restaurant, trembled slightly, from cold, from exhaustion, from the gnawing emptiness that had become his constant companion. The dog, if it could still be called that beneath the matted fur and protruding ribs, pressed itself deeper into the shadow as Elian approached. Its eyes, amber pools of terror, watched his every movement. "I won't hurt you," Elian whispered in his accented English, the words carried away by the wind that tunneled between apartment buildings. 23 years old, and sometimes he still felt like the 8-year-old boy who had watched his parents' bodies disappear beneath rubble after the earthquake that had swallowed their village whole. He crouched, ignoring how the rainwater soaked through the knees of his only pair of decent pants. From his pocket, he withdrew half a sandwich, the remainder of his dinner saved for tomorrow's lunch. His own stomach protested with a hollow growl. "You need it more than I do," he murmured, placing the offering on the ground between them and sliding it forward with gentle fingers. The dog's nose twitched, but it made no move toward the food. Its body trembled violently, not just from cold, Elian realized, but from pain. In the dim light, he could now make out darker patches in the matted golden fur, dried blood, and something more sinister. Circular burn marks that could only have been made deliberately. Something cracked open in Elian's chest. The familiar ache of loneliness transformed into a sharp, hot anger. Who could do this to a living creature? The same question he'd asked about his own life. About the border guards who'd laughed at his papers. About the landlord who doubled his rent when he heard Elian's accent. "I know what it's like," he said, voice thick. "To be treated like you don't matter." Time stretched between them, marked by falling rain and distant sirens. Eventually, hunger won out over fear. The dog inched forward, sniffing cautiously at the sandwich before snatching it and retreating. It devoured the food in 3 desperate gulps. Elian smiled, a rare expression that felt foreign on his face. "Good, yes. Not 5-star, but Mrs. A body lets me take home the scraps sometimes." The dog's eyes remained fixed on him, still wary but with something new, a fragile thread of possibility stretching between them. "Come," Elian said, extending his hand palm up. "My apartment is small, but it's dry." He didn't expect the animal to understand, let alone trust him. But sometimes the universe creates bridges between broken things. The dog took one halting step forward, then another. When it collapsed, legs finally giving out, Elian was there to catch its emaciated body. The weight was shocking, too little for a dog this size. Beneath the matted fur, Elian could feel every rib, every vertebra of its spine. The animal whimpered but didn't struggle as he gathered it into his arms. "We will be okay," he whispered, unsure if he was reassuring the dog or himself. The warmth of the creature against his chest filled some hollow space he'd been carrying for years. His apartment was a single room above a Chinese grocery, reached by a narrow, creaking staircase that seemed to sway with each step. Inside, peeling wallpaper and water stains created abstract patterns across the ceiling, but it was clean. Elian kept it that way, a small rebellion against chaos. He laid the dog on his mattress, the springs protesting beneath the new weight. The animal's eyes followed him as he filled his only bowl with water and placed it nearby. "Drink," he encouraged, dipping his fingers into the water and bringing them to the dog's muzzle. After a moment's hesitation, a dry tongue emerged to lick the moisture. Progress, small but real. Elian worked methodically, using his precious hot water allowance to dampen a towel. With gentle strokes, he began cleaning the worst of the filth from the golden fur. The dog winced when he touched certain areas but didn't bite or growl. It watched him with those intelligent amber eyes that seemed to hold questions Elian couldn't answer. "I don't know who hurt you," he said, his voice filling the small room. "But they won't find you here." As he worked, he found himself talking more than he had in months. Words poured out, about the restaurant where he washed dishes, about Mrs. A body who slipped him extra food when the manager wasn't looking, about the night classes he took 3 times a week, determined to learn enough English to find better work. "I came here 5 years ago," he told the dog as he carefully untangled a particularly bad mat. "After the earthquake, I lived in the orphanage until I was 18. Then I had to leave." He didn't mention the smugglers, the 3 days in a shipping container, the money he still owed. Some stories were too heavy to share, even with a silent companion. The dog sighed, a trembling exhale that seemed to release something held tight. As Elian cleaned away grime, a different animal emerged. A golden retriever, perhaps 3 or 4 years old. Once beautiful and still somehow holding dignity beneath the abuse. It was while cleaning around the dog's neck that Elian's fingers found the raised skin, a small bump beneath the fur. Parting the golden strands, he discovered a scar, surgical and purposeful. "What's this?" he murmured. The dog lifted its head slightly, the first voluntary movement since they'd arrived at the apartment. Elian ran his fingers over the spot again, contemplating. He'd heard about microchips from Mrs. Abadi, who had chipped her cat after it had wandered off last summer. A microchip meant the dog had belonged to someone once, someone who had cared enough to have it registered. Before, whatever had happened to bring it to that alley. "You have secrets," Elian said, scratching gently behind the dog's ears. "Me too." That night, they slept side by side on his narrow mattress, the dog's breathing becoming steadier as hours passed. Elian lay awake longer, watching moonlight trace patterns across his ceiling, feeling the unfamiliar warmth of another living being beside him. Just before dawn, he felt a soft weight shift against his side. The dog had moved closer, pressing its body against his ribs, seeking comfort or offering it. Elian wasn't sure which. "We'll figure it out," he promised the darkness. Somehow, morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through his single window. Elian woke to find the dog watching him, head resting on paws, eyes clearer than they had been the night before. "Good morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. "Feeling better?" The slight wag of a tail answered him. Something warm unfurled in Elian's chest. His routine, normally solitary and efficient, adjusted around his new companion. He poured some of his precious milk into a chip saucer, watching as the dog lapped at it tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. "Slow," he cautioned. "Your stomach needs time." Before leaving for his shift at the restaurant, Elian filled his sink with water and left 2 slices of bread torn into pieces, soaking in the last of his broth. "I'll be back at 4, he told the dog, who watched him from the mattress. Rest, heal. The walk to work felt different somehow. The same cracked sidewalks, the same gray buildings, the same hurried strangers avoiding eye contact. But inside, something had shifted. A responsibility, yes, but also a purpose beyond mere survival. Mrs. Abadi noticed immediately. The older woman's keen eyes missed nothing as she tied her apron beside him in the kitchen. "You're smiling," she said, the accusation softened by her own smile. "Did you meet a girl?" Elian shook his head, plunging his hands into the soapy water. "I found a dog." Her eyebrows rose. "A dog? In your tiny apartment?" "It needed help," he said simply. Mrs. Abadi studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "I'll save the meat scraps for you." True to her word, she pressed a package wrapped in foil into his hands as his shift ended. Chicken bones and bits. Not too much at first, mind you. The warmth in her eyes made something tighten in Elian's throat. "Thank you. What will you name it?" she called after him. The question followed him home. A name was a commitment, an acknowledgement that the dog might stay, that Elian might let himself care for something that could be taken away. When he opened his apartment door, he half expected to find the dog gone, escaped through the window he'd left cracked for air. Instead, he found it sitting beside the sink, waiting, its tail sweeping a small arc across the floor at his entrance. "Hello?" Elian said, the word catching strangely in his throat. The transformation a day had made was remarkable. Though still thin and wounded, the dog held itself with more strength. The fear in its eyes had receded, replaced by cautious hope. As he unwrapped Mrs. Abadi's package, revealing the scraps of chicken, the dog's nose twitched eagerly. Yet it made no move to snatch the food, instead looking between the meat and Elian's face, waiting for permission. "This is for you," he said, placing some pieces into the clean bowl. "But gentle, slowly." The dog ate with restraint that spoke of good training in its past. When finished, it looked up at Elian and deliberately pressed its nose against his hand. A thank you. That evening, as rain returned to drum against his window, Elian sat on the floor beside his mattress, the dog curled against his leg. He stroked the cleaner fur, discovering more patches of mistreatment, but also the resilience beneath. "You need a name," he told the animal. "Something strong." The dog's ears perked up, attentive to his voice. Elian thought of his homeland, of the stories his mother had told him before the earth had swallowed her words. In my country, there is a legend of a golden guardian who protects lost children. His fingers traced a particularly nasty scar along the dog's flank. His name was Aurelio. It means golden one. The dog's tail thumped against the floor. Aurelio, Elian repeated, testing the name. Is that who you are? The dog, Aurelio, rested his head on Elian's knee, eyes drifting closed in contentment. For the first time in years, Elian felt the weight of loneliness lift slightly. One creature in this vast, cold city knew he existed, waited for his return, looked at him with something other than indifference or suspicion. Days melted into a new routine. Elian woke early, walked Aurelio briefly before work, and rushed home after his shift. The dog grew stronger, his wounds healing into scars that would always mark him but no longer pained him. His golden coat regained some of its luster, revealing a beauty that had been hidden beneath neglect. A body became an accomplice in Aurelio's recovery, providing not just food scraps but also an old towel to serve as a dog bed and advice gleaned from her years of cat ownership. That's a purebred golden retriever, she declared after finally meeting Aurelio 3 weeks after Elian had found him. Worth good money to someone, once upon a time. The words troubled Elian as he stroked Aurelio's head. He's not worth money. He's worth more, Mrs. Abadi's eyes softened. Yes, she agreed. Much more. But that chip in his neck, someone was looking for him once. The microchip had become a silent presence in their shared life. A question mark Elian wasn't ready to confront. If he took Aurelio to a vet, they would scan it. They might find owners. The ones who had let him fall into abusive hands? Or original owners who had lost him? Either way, Elian might lose the first connection he'd allowed himself in years. But as November turned to December and winter tightened its grip on the city, he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Aurelio deserved proper medical care. The dog limped slightly on cold mornings, and one of the deeper wounds on his side had developed an angry redness around its edges. We need to have you checked, Elian told Aurelio as they shared his mattress one particularly cold night, the dog's warmth a blessing against the insufficient heating. But I'm afraid. Aurelio lifted his head, resting his chin on Elian's chest, those intelligent eyes seeming to understand more than should be possible. What if they take you away? Elian whispered, giving voice to his deepest fear. What if someone is looking for you? The dog inched closer, pressing his body against Elian's side in silent reassurance. The next morning, Elian called in sick to work for the first time since starting at the restaurant 2 years ago. He counted out his meager savings, separated from his rent money and the funds he sent home to the orphanage each month. Barely enough for a veterinary visit, but it had to be done. The local clinic was small, wedged between a laundromat and a convenience store. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and wet dog, an improvement over the alley where they had first met. Aurelio pressed against Elian's leg, alert but no longer trembling with fear as he once would have. The veterinarian doctor, Chen, was a woman with kind eyes and efficient hands. She examined Aurelio thoroughly, clucking her tongue at the evidence of past abuse, but smiling at the signs of healing. You've done well by him, she told Elian, her fingers gently probing the infected wound. This needs antibiotics, but it's not as bad as it could be. He's recovering nicely from the malnutrition. Pride warmed Elian's chest. He is strong. Yes, Dr. Fordiaworm, Dana worry, Chen agreed. Golden retrievers are resilient by nature, but this one has clearly been through terrible treatment. The cigarette burns alone. She shook her head. Criminal. She applied medication to the wound, then paused, her fingers finding the raised bump on Aurelio's neck. He's microchipped. Would you like me to scan it? The moment Elian had been dreading crystallized. His hand found Aurelio's fur, fingers tightening slightly. The dog looked up at him, tail offering a small, encouraging wag. I found him, Elian explained, words tumbling out. In an alley 6 weeks ago. He was hurt, starving. I've been caring for him since. Doctor. Chen's expression remained kind but professional. The chip might tell us if he was reported missing. Perhaps he was stolen from his original owners before being abused. The possibility hadn't occurred to Elian. That Aurelio might have been loved once, then taken, then hurt. It mirrored his own journey too closely. The orphan, removed from everything familiar, thrust into a world that showed little kindness. Okay, he whispered. Check. The scanner beeped as it passed over Aurelio's neck. Doctor, Amiri Iwase Surasuri. Chen's eyes widened slightly as she read the information on the small screen. Well, she said, her tone carefully neutral. This is unusual. Ah! What is it? Anxiety twisted in Elian's stomach. The chip is registered to the Royal Kennel of Montserrat. This dog's registered name is Prince Aurelius of Montserrat Valley. She looked between Elian and the dog with new interest. He's an international champion show dog, reported missing 18 months ago. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Elian's feet. Montserrat? The island? Dr. Wacho Yashurin, Shen nodded. The royal family there maintains one of the most prestigious golden retriever breeding programs in the world. She hesitated. I'm required by law to report this. The chip has a missing pet alert attached to it. Prince Aurelius, pressed closer to Elian, perhaps sensing his distress. The irony of the name Elian had chosen, so close to the dog's real one, would have been amusing in any other circumstance. What will happen to him? Elian asked, his voice barely audible. I'll contact the registry. They'll reach out to the owners. Doctor, Shen's expression softened. They may want him back. There's a substantial reward listed. Money. Always it came down to money in this country. The one thing Elian never had enough of, never would have enough of. I don't want a reward, he said. I want ... But he couldn't finish. What right did he have to want anything? He was an immigrant with questionable status, working for cash at a restaurant, living in an apartment where pets weren't even allowed. And Aurelius, was royalty, with owners wealthy enough to offer substantial rewards and register him internationally. I understand. Doctor, Shen said gently, give me your contact information. It may take a few days for them to respond. The walk home was silent, heavy with unspoken fears. Aurelio seemed to sense Elian's mood, staying closer than usual, occasionally looking up with concerned eyes. You're a prince, Elian told him as they climbed the stairs to his apartment. All this time I've had royalty sleeping on my mattress. Inside, he sank onto the edge of his bed. The antibiotics doctor Shen had provided clutched in his hand. Aurelio sat before him, head tilted questioningly. They will take you back, Elian said, the words hollow in his chest. They can give you everything I cannot. Good food, proper care, a real home. Aurelio whined softly, placing one paw on Elian's knee. I should be happy for you, he continued, his vision blurring. To find your real family. The dog moved then, climbing onto the bed beside him, pressing his warm body against Elian's side. A gesture that had become familiar, comforting, and soon to be lost. That night, Elian dreamed of earthquakes and shipping containers, and border guards with cruel eyes. He woke gasping, sweat-soaked despite the cold room. Immediately, a warm weight shifted beside him. Aurelio, alert to his distress, licking his hand in reassurance. I'm okay, Elian whispered, pulling the dog closer. We're okay. For now. Days passed with agonizing slowness. Elian returned to work, moved through his routine, but everything felt temporary, suspended. Each evening when he returned home, relief flooded him to find Aurelio still there. Still his, temporarily his. On the fourth day after the vet visit, Elian's ancient phone rang with an unknown number. His heart stuttered as he answered. Mr. Nazari. The voice was female, accented but not American. This is Amara Fernandez, private secretary to Her Royal Highness Princess Elena of Montserrat. I'm calling regarding Prince Aurelius. Elian sank onto his mattress, Aurelio immediately pressing against him. Yes, he managed. We understand you found our missing dog. We're quite astonished and grateful. Prince Aurelius disappeared during an international show in Toronto 18 months ago. We presumed him dead after so much time. He was hurt, Elian said, his hand finding Aurelio's fur. Someone hurt him badly. A pause. Yes, the veterinary report indicated signs of abuse. This is distressing news. Her Highness is most concerned. Elian waited for the inevitable. Instructions for returning Aurelio. Perhaps talk of the reward. Instead, the woman continued in a more hesitant tone. Mr. Nazari, Her Highness would like to meet with you personally, to thank you for saving Aurelius and to discuss certain matters regarding his future. Meet? Elian echoed. But I can't travel internationally. My papers are complicated, insufficient, possibly not entirely legal. We understand your situation, Miss, Fernandez said with a knowledge that made Elian's skin prickle with anxiety. Princess Elena is currently in New York for United Nations business. She would like to meet tomorrow if possible. A car will be sent for you. Before Elian could formulate a response, she continued. And Mr. Nazari, please bring Aurelius. Her Highness is eager to see him. To say goodbye, Elian thought, his throat tightening. Yes, of course. After the call ended, he sat motionless, phone still clutched in his hand. Aurelio watched him with those knowing eyes, head tilted in question. Tomorrow, Elian told him, voice cracking. Tomorrow you go home. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay awake, memorizing the weight of Aurelio against him, the rhythm of his breathing, the exact gold of his fur in the streetlight filtering through the window. All the details he would soon need to live without. Morning arrived with bitter cold and a text message providing a time, 11 a.m., and confirmation that a car would collect him. Elian dressed in his best clothes, pitifully inadequate for meeting royalty. Clean jeans without holes, a button-down shirt. A body had given him for Christmas, and his one decent jacket. Aurelio sensed the importance of the day, staying close, watching Elian's movements with unusual intensity. You look handsome, Elian told him, brushing the golden coat until it gleamed. Ready to meet your princess. The car that arrived was not the ostentatious limousine Elian had feared, but a discreet black sedan with tinted windows. The driver, a woman in a simple suit, opened the door for them without comment. Where are we going? Elian asked as they pulled away from his neighborhood. The Thornfield Hotel, sir. Upper East Side. Of course. A world away from Elian's reality. The Thornfield was old money elegance, all polished marble and subdued luxury. As Elian stepped from the car, Aurelio at his side, he felt the doorman's assessing gaze, taking in his worn shoes, his obviously inexpensive clothes, the nervousness he couldn't hide. Mr. Nazari? A woman approached, smartly dressed in a tailored suit. I'm Amara Fernandez. Thank you for coming. Her eyes dropped to Aurelio, and for a moment her professional composure cracked. Oh, it really is him. After all this time, Aurelio's tail wagged in response, but he made no move to approach her, staying firmly at Elian's side. Please follow me. Her Highness is waiting in the private suite. They took a dedicated elevator to the top floor. Rising above the city Elian had walked for 5 years, but never seen from such heights. The doors opened directly into a penthouse that could have contained his entire apartment building. This way, Ms. Fernandez directed, leading them through rooms decorated in subtle luxury. She paused before a set of double doors, knocking lightly before opening them. Your Highness, Mr. Nazari and Prince Aurelius have arrived. The woman who rose to greet them was not what Elian had expected. In his mind, royalty meant crowns and formal wear and untouchable elegance. Princess Elena of Montserrat wore simple black trousers and a cream silk blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She couldn't have been much older than Elian himself, perhaps 30, with warm brown skin and eyes that immediately sought out the dog at his side. Aurelius, she breathed, her composure faltering. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then Aurelio whined, a small questioning sound. His tail began to wag, slowly at first, then with gathering enthusiasm. The princess knelt, protocol forgotten, extending her hand. Come here, old friend. Elian felt the moment of choice vibrate through Aurelio's body. The dog looked up at him, as if seeking permission, then back to the princess. With gentle deliberation, he moved forward, crossing the space between past and present. Princess Elena's hands found his fur, stroked his head, examined him with careful fingers. What happened to you? She murmured, finding the scars, the evidence of suffering. Aurelio allowed her touch, his tail still wagging, but after a moment, he backed away and returned to Elian's side, pressing against his leg in a gesture that had become his signature form of comfort. Though whether he was offering it or seeking it, Elian couldn't tell. The princess rose, her eyes now fixed on Elian. Thank you, she said simply, for saving him when we could not. Elian shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. He saved me too, he admitted, the words surprising him with their truth. A small smile touched her lips. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. They settled in a sitting area overlooking Central Park, a vista of winter trees and distant skyscrapers that made Elian acutely aware of how small his world had become. Aurelio settled at his feet, head resting on his shoe. Monsieur Fernandez tells me you found Aurelius 6 weeks ago? The princess began. Elian nodded. In an alley behind the restaurant where I work. He hesitated, unwilling to cause her pain with details of Aurelio's condition. You can be frank, she said, her gaze steady. I need to know what he experienced. So Elian told her, sparing nothing, the condition he had found Aurelio in, the evidence of deliberate cruelty, the slow process of building trust and healing together. As he spoke, her expression remained controlled, but her hands tightened into fists. He was stolen, she said when he finished. From the Toronto show. We offered rewards, hired investigators. After 6 months with no trace, we feared the worst. How did he end up in that alley? Elian asked. We may never know the full story. Perhaps he was taken for ransom, but something went wrong. Perhaps he escaped his captors. Perhaps they abandoned him when he became ill or too difficult to handle. She looked at Aurelio with deep affection. He was always stubborn, willful, my father would say. Elian's hand found Aurelio's head, stroking lightly. He is strong. Yes. Princess Elena studied them together, something unreadable in her expression. Measures. Fernandez has briefed me on your situation, Mr. Nazari. You came to this country after the earthquake in your homeland. You were orphaned, I understand. The sudden shift to his personal history made Elian tense. Yes, your immigration status is complicated. Fear flashed cold through his veins. I have application papers filed, he said carefully. I work. I pay taxes. She waved a hand dismissively. I have no interest in immigration politics. I mention it only because it relates to what I wish to propose. Elian waited, heart hammering. Aurelius was my father's dog, she continued. A gift for his 60th birthday, specially bred from our royal line. When my father died 3 years ago, Aurelius became mine, though I think he always considered himself more my father's than anyone's. Grief shadowed her features briefly. When he disappeared, it was like losing a final link to my father. I never expected to see him again. She looked directly at Elian. You gave him back to me, and for that, I am deeply grateful. Here it comes, Elian thought. The thanks, the reward, the farewell. However, the princess continued, I've observed something just now that gives me pause. Aurelius has bonded with you. In all the years he was with us, he was always friendly, but somewhat aloof. My father's dog, tolerating the rest of us. I've never seen him seek reassurance from anyone the way he does with you. Elian's throat tightened. We understand each other. Yes, I believe you do. She leaned forward. Mr. Nazari, I could take Aurelius back to Montserrat. It would be within my rights and no court would dispute it. But I wonder if that would be best for him. Hope, dangerous and fragile, flickered in Elian's chest. I have a proposal, she said. The Montserrat Foundation funds animal welfare programs globally. We need a coordinator for our North American initiatives. Someone who understands firsthand the bond between humans and animals, especially those who have suffered. The position includes legal sponsorship for work authorization. Elian's breath caught. You're offering me a job? And an opportunity for legal status, yes. The foundation can sponsor your application. Her eyes held his. It would mean Aurelius could stay with you, where he clearly feels safe, while still remaining officially part of the royal kennel. You would be his guardian, and I would have visitation rights when I'm in the country. The room seemed to spin slightly. Why would you do this? You don't know me. I know what you did for him, she said simply. When you found an abused animal, you didn't walk past. You shared your food, your home, your life. You sought medical care even knowing it might mean losing him. Her voice softened. Those actions speak to your character more eloquently than any resume. Aurelio shifted, sensing Elian's emotions. He placed his head on Elian's knee, those amber eyes looking up with what could only be described as hope. I don't know anything about coordinating programs, Elian admitted. You know what matters most, compassion. The rest can be learned. Princess Elena smiled. Besides, you'll have an excellent assistant. She nodded to Aurelio. He's quite experienced in royal protocol. For the first time since entering the penthouse, Elian felt himself smile. He snores. A royal prerogative, she countered, her own smile widening. When would this job start? Immediately. We have temporary housing arranged until you find something suitable. The foundation will cover relocation costs. It was too much, too fast. Everything Elian had desperately needed offered by a stranger because of a dog. A royal dog with a microchip and owners who cared enough to look for him even after 18 months. As if sensing his overwhelm, Princess Elena softened her approach. Take the day to consider it. Talk it over with Aurelius. He's quite a good listener, I found. Elian nodded, grateful for the reprieve. In the meantime, she continued, would you join me for lunch? I'd like to hear more about how you've been caring for him, and perhaps tell you some stories about his royal upbringing. Food appeared as if by magic, a discreet service that reminded Elian of the vast distance between their worlds. Yet as they spoke, sharing stories of Aurelio's quirks and habits, that distance seemed to shrink. The princess laughed at Elian's description of Aurelio's first bath, his dignified outrage at the indignity. He always hated baths, she confirmed. My father had to bribe him with cheese. Cheese, Elian exclaimed. That's why he goes crazy when misses. A body brings over her special feta. For 2 hours they talked, not as princess and immigrant, but as two people who loved the same dog. When it was time to leave, Princess Elena walked them to the elevator herself. "Consider my offer," she said. "Whatever you decide about the position, know that Aurelius has chosen you. I won't override his choice." Elian's vision blurred slightly. "Thank you, Your Highness." "Elena," she corrected. "Anyone who has shared their last sandwich with Aurelius has earned first-name basis." In the car returning to his apartment, Elian sat in stunned silence, one hand resting on Aurelio's back. The dog leaned against him, steady and warm, a constant in the shifting landscape of Elian's life. "What should we do?" he asked aloud. Aurelio looked up at him with those wise eyes that had seen both palace halls and alley dumpsters, had known both cruelty and kindness. He had no answers, only presence. And perhaps that was answer enough. His apartment felt smaller than ever when they returned. The peeling wallpaper and water stains stark reminders of his precarious existence. Yet it had been home, the first place that had truly been his since the earthquake. The first place he had shared with someone who cared if he came home. "Mrs.?" A body knocked on his door that evening, bearing leftover moussaka and questions about his unusual day off. "A princess?" she repeated when he haltingly explained. "Our Aurelio belongs to a princess? Prince Aurelius of Montserrat Valley?" Elian confirmed, the formal name still strange on his tongue. "Mrs." A body looked at the dog sprawled comfortably across Elian's mattress. "He does have a certain regal air," she conceded. "But why did she let you keep him?" Elian explained the job offer, watching disbelief transform into excitement on Mrs. A body's face. "This is divine intervention," she declared. "Allah has seen your kindness and rewarded it. You must accept." "It feels too easy," Elian admitted. "Nothing in my life has ever come without struggle." "Mrs." A body's expression softened. "Perhaps that is precisely why this opportunity has arrived. To show you that not all doors must be forced open." After she left, Elian sat beside Aurelio on the mattress, scratching behind the dog's ears in the way he had discovered he liked best. "What do you think?" he asked. "Should we start a new adventure together?" Aurelio rolled onto his back, offering his belly for scratches. The ultimate gesture of trust from a dog who had once cowered from human touch. The answer, Elian realized, had been there all along, embedded in their unlikely journey together. From the moment he had shared his sandwich in that rain-soaked alley, they had been moving toward this. Not an ending, but a beginning. Morning came with clarity. Elian called the number Princess Elena had provided and accepted her offer. Events moved with royal efficiency after that. Within a week, Elian and Aurelio were installed in a small but elegant apartment near the Foundation's offices. "Mrs." A body cried at their farewell dinner, extracting promises of visits and phone calls. "You bring that royal dog back to see me," she insisted. "Remind him of his humble beginnings." Learning his new role was challenging, but Elian approached it with the same determination that had carried him across borders and through hardships. Princess Elena proved to be a supportive mentor, patient with his questions and generous with her knowledge. And always Aurelio was there. In the office where he had his own bed, though he preferred to lie at Elian's feet, in meetings where his presence reminded everyone of the Foundation's purpose, and at home where they still shared quiet evenings and whispered confidences. 6 months after that rainy night in the alley, Elian stood at the podium of the Montserrat Foundation's annual gala, Aurelio sitting regally beside him. Before him, an audience of donors and supporters waited to hear about the new initiatives he had helped develop. Programs that paired rescued animals with refugees and immigrants, creating healing bonds for both. "The greatest acts of kindness," Elian began, his accent still present, but his confidence growing, "often seem small in the moment. Sharing food, offering shelter, extending trust to someone who has forgotten what trust feels like." His hand found Aurelio's head, drawing strength from the warm fur beneath his fingers. "I was an orphaned immigrant who saved an abused dog," he continued, echoing the title that had been his life. "I didn't know his hidden microchip would reveal royal connections. I only knew he needed help, and somehow in helping him, I found the help I needed too." Aurelio pressed against his leg, a gesture that had evolved from seeking reassurance to offering it. "This is what our foundation strives to create. Not just rescue, but restoration. Not just shelter, but home. Not just existence, but purpose." In the front row, Princess Elena nodded encouragement, her eyes bright with what might have been tears. "Every one of us carries invisible scars," Elian said, his voice steady. And every one of us has the capacity to heal and be healed through connection. This is what Aurelio taught me, from Royal Kennel to City Alley and back again. That no matter where we come from or what we've endured, we are all worthy of second chances. Later, as the gala wound down, Elian found a quiet moment with Princess Elena on the terrace overlooking the city lights. "You've transformed the foundation," she told him. "My father would have been impressed." "Aurelio did the hard work," Elian replied. "I just followed his lead." She smiled, watching as Aurelio charmed treats from a waiter nearby. "He chose well when he chose you." "We chose each other," Elian corrected gently. "In that alley, we both took a chance on kindness." The princess nodded, understanding in her eyes. The best decisions often look like chance to others. As they stood in comfortable silence, Elian reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The earthquake that had orphaned him, the borders he had crossed, the struggles he had endured, and the rain-soaked night he had shared his last sandwich with a golden dog huddled against a dumpster. His hand found the small velvet box in his pocket, containing the citizenship papers that had arrived that morning. His final step toward belonging in this country that had once seemed so unwelcoming. Later, he would show them to Aurelio, who would respond with the same dignified joy he showed for all of Elian's achievements. They would celebrate together, as they had weathered hardships together. The orphaned immigrant and the royal dog, both finding home in each other. For now, he watched the city lights shimmer like stars fall into earth, feeling Aurelio's warm presence beside him and the future opening before them. A future neither could have imagined alone, but one they had created together, one act of kindness at a time.